while books are not immune from the AI revolution, in fact, AI written books are everywhere on Amazon now, they may still be one of the few channels left where people treat AI with absolute disdain and absolutely demand a human touch. Writing a book is not only a very human endeavour and a way of connecting with other people, it's also a way to establish yourself as a thought leader. A book, whether self-published or not, can give you credibility and lead to opportunities you never dreamed possible. At least that's certainly been my experience. Also, it's just nice to get all your ideas down in one place sometimes. Now, as an author, I get asked regularly about the process of writing a book, and the answer is there are many pathways you could take. But if you really have been thinking about writing a book, then there's one thing that could be incredibly helpful, and that is getting yourself a book coach. Which is who I'm interviewing today. Jade Miller is an author, artist, book coach, and creative strategist helping smart people create world-class non-fiction books. Leading with the diagnostic question almost nobody asks first, is a book the right thing? Jade brings her 20 plus years of communications expertise, writing and publishing experience, and her creative flair to the book coaching table. She helps authors untangle their ideas, develop strong foundations with a book blueprint, and provides ongoing support and accountability through the publishing journey. Now, Jade is much better at book coaching than I am, which is why I wanted to talk to her on the show. So if you're keen to write a book, maybe you've got a little inkling to write, or maybe you've been trying to encourage someone else to publish their thought leadership, then this is the episode for you and for them. So without further ado, let's get into it. Here's Jade. Jade Miller, welcome to Let's Chat and More Meta.
Hello, Mel. Lovely to see you.
It's lovely to see you too. And this episode in itself has been a while in the making because we've known each other a long time and you are a very accomplished comms person and artist. But for people who don't know who you are, can you tell us a bit about what you do and how you came to develop your expertise in that space?
Yeah, sure. So primarily at the moment, I am helping very smart people develop and create their world-class books. I have spent over 20 years in communications, marketing, design, with a whole range of creative side hustles, business things, and creative projects, and that includes publishing my own book. I really enjoy book coaching with people. It's a really incredible experience for both me and for the other person, of course. And it's just been a very exciting sort of pivot, I guess, away from traditional comms into a more specific medium, I guess, that people were writing with their books. And yeah, just really enjoying that at the moment. So I'm happy to be here to chat with you all about it and hopefully help some people with their book writing.
Yeah, so your book is called Making Lemonade. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So it's Making Lemonade, an antidote to the existential crisis. It's a somewhat irreverent, humorous, self-development experience, I would say. Just talking through and sharing with people about how we can get through some really hard challenges in life. Understanding ourselves, understanding each other and connecting with one another, and understanding the bigger context of life and some of the systems and processes that we're subject to in this existence. I published a couple of years ago and it was just a really fantastic experience. It's hard going writing a book, but it's really worth it. And it was probably for me, it was more of a creative expression project, and people have different reasons why they write books, and that is totally valid to do that as a personal sort of project, and then other people want to use it as an authority piece for their business or for their career. There's people have different reasons why they write books.
And I certainly know from my own experience that I get asked a lot. Actually, I was just asked yesterday about the process of writing a book and how, the start to finish, how we how we even get started with an idea, right through to the publishing, the marketing, all that sort of bits and bobs. Is that something you get asked a lot? Is that kind of what led you to the book coaching piece?
Mm. Yeah, it was actually sort of accidental getting into the book coaching. A mutual friend, as you know, Prina Shah. So she asked me to coach her finishing her manuscript and self-publishing her manuscript for her book, Make Work Meaningful. And I guess I discovered with her through that process, I was actually really good at coaching people in this space. And I, yeah, I just thoroughly enjoyed it. And then somebody else asked me, and somebody else asked me. And so now here I am as a book coach, helping several people bring their work into the world.
Which is awesome. So let's talk about book writing, because I do feel there's a lot of people who listen to this podcast who have thought about writing a book maybe one day, are curious about it. What are some of the common challenges people have when it comes to writing a book that you see?
Yeah, I think there's probably three that I can think of. And the first one is really nailing the idea, the core idea. Um, People often have multiple ideas within their idea, but they don't necessarily realize that. So I love helping people get to the core purpose, the core reader, who your audience is, and what the transformation is going to be for them, from A to B, whatever that might be. I think the challenge is trying to cram too much into a first book, particularly. There's, yeah, if you have ideas, that's fantastic, but it's sort of you've got to really focus those into something that's one core thing that people will be able to talk about. I guess another challenge is maintaining momentum through the book writing process, because it can be very exciting and you get a lot of ideas out to begin with, but it's a marathon, and it can be disheartening with the ups and downs of the process. So maintaining momentum and I will work with people when they're on their good phases, bad phases, but getting people to stay motivated can be a real challenge. The other thing that I think is a challenge is people not thinking beyond publish date. So the marketing and what you really want the book to achieve for you. If you've got ideas about that, then you need to have a plan for it. So I think that can be a real challenge, because going through the book writing process and then you get to publish and you sort of breathe a sigh of relief, but there's actually quite a lot of work to do post publishing.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think for me, the easy part was actually writing the book. It was the hard part was what came next. So
Yes.
for a person who thinks they might have a book in them, where do you suggest they start? Because writing a book can, just even saying that, can feel quite overwhelming. Where would you suggest they start?
For sure. I think it comes back to that developing what that core idea is and doing some foundational work on teasing out what that is, really identifying who your reader is and what the transformation is that you're offering and what you're giving to people. People might want to write a book and share all of their knowledge, which is, that's fantastic. But what is it that you're really offering people? Why are they going to pick it up? Why is somebody going to mention your book? And how will they say it in one sentence? How will they, refer you or share what your work is? I run a session like that with people to tease out their initial idea, to help sort of set up the foundations so that people aren't wasting time necessarily doing, going down one direction and then realizing, oh, this is actually all wrong. Let's start again. So it can help save people time by really doing that foundational ideation sort of work. Yeah. And sometimes I think it's actually working out. You might have an idea, but is your idea a book? People often think, I want to write a book, but is it a book? And that's another thing that I sort of help people tease out. Might be the only book coach that puts myself out of work doing that, but getting to the end of that and going, well, maybe it's not a book. It might just be a podcast, but, well, not just a podcast. Podcast is big too, but, yeah, I think the first question is, is it a book? Is probably
that's a great
a big thing.
question. And it's not something I ever considered asking myself, to be honest. And I think you're absolutely right. Like, we do this a lot at work as comms people, like, right? Like, should this be an email or should this be a phone call? Should this be a town hall, or maybe this should be some round tables? And to me, it comes back to the audience, right? Who are you creating this for in the first place? And how do you think they're going to use it as well?
Yeah.
So, I mean, for my book, I had to get very clear on, well, I think it's for change managers and comms people and team leaders who want to get better at communicating change. That was the first book. What about you? Who are you writing your first book for?
Yeah, my book was for women in their 30s. I'd sort of just come out of my 30s and faced a bunch of challenges that we do in our 30s, going through divorce, some brain surgery, a whole raft of things. My book was, and also part of it was about discovering my neurodivergence. So that is interwoven. It's not solely about that, but it's sort of about that, and it's for women who have had a similar experience, may have, recently discovered their ADHD, or they've gone through some stuff. And it was sort of just me getting out my process of how I've managed to get through some really big life challenges.
So it sounds like you were very specific in your audience. Is that something you'd suggest for people?
Definitely. I think it's very difficult, and people find it hard because they think that they're excluding other people by getting specific about one person, but you're not. You're not excluding anyone. You're just honing your focus so that you're speaking to one person, and it just makes it more human. It makes it more connectable. It's just a really good way to engage with your writing, is to write as if you're speaking to one person and understanding who that person is, what their needs are, what their self-consciousnesses are, the things that are going on for them, understanding all of that, and then, even creating a persona of that person, and just having that in mind when you're writing, to focus. Yeah.
Which is it almost comms 101, isn't it? It's like, understand your audience, segment them. I feel like it does make it easier. And like you say, it's not excluding anybody. It's just law of averages, really, right? When there's not going to be one person very rarely one person out there that ticks all the boxes in your persona, but pieces of that will ring true for people. So let's say you started the book, you've got the idea clear, and you know who you're writing to or for. What's the process then, do you think, that would best help people for just getting the draft done, getting the first crappy draft onto paper or virtual paper?
Yeah. Another thing that I do with people is help to put a bit of a structure in place. I think that when you have the idea, you might have one core idea, and then try to name 10 things about that idea to give you chapter headings to work with. That's a really good start to brain dump into those subtopics, I guess. And the brain dumping is really important because that's part of how you process and get the really good stuff out. People might start a chapter and the really good stuff isn't until 5 paragraphs in, and then you end up deleting all of the earlier stuff because that's just you processing the topic, processing the story, processing the idea. But it is really important to do that brain dumping and not necessarily be trying to write perfectly to begin with, but just understanding that there's a creative process going on, and the more you do, the more gold you'll get from it.
Yeah, I think
I think
structure for anything is useful, isn't it? Because trying to just sit down and let it all flow, I'm not sure whether that's sustainable, but also I've certainly found that I have so many ideas in my head that without a structure, it would just be an absolute mess. I need to be able to categorize that because, again, in my head, it all makes sense. Out the real world, anybody outside of my head might be like, what the hell is she talking about?
yeah,
And that structure can change as you write, right? Like, you're like, oh, actually, that doesn't
absolutely.
work as much as I thought, I'm going to change that to this or whatever. Like, that's fine. But it's that fluidity as well, and being open to changing the structure for myself, at least, was a bit of a learning curve. Coming up with the structure in the first place that made sense was a big learning, especially for the first book. And also for me, it was about going, well, what stories best illustrate each one of these points I want to make? Yeah, and I was talking to somebody yesterday who is writing her first book, and one of the things she asked me was, how do I write about work-related stories when I probably won't get permission to mention their names and all that sort of stuff? What would your response to that be?
I would suggest, I mean, it's quite easy to anonymize things. I think those stories are valuable, and I guess you could write it with a lot of your, if it's a, say there's a scenario that's happened and it's relatable to your chapter, and there may be things that come up as you're writing that are a bit challenging for you, but keeping that part out of it and keeping it like a practical lesson in a generic way, I think it's definitely possible to keep those kind of stories anonymous.
Yeah, I agree. And the flip side is if it's been reported in media, then to me, like, well, that's out in the public domain already. So if we're talking about a case study like, well, just this week in Australia, we had the Telstra outage last couple of weeks ago. I mean, that's widely reported. You can talk about that. There's things that are out there that are very public that make the same point if you're really worried about it, I think.
Yeah.
So we've gone through the process of writing the draft, we've structured, we've written the draft. What might happen next?
Okay, so part of the decision for your process is about whether you want to pitch to a publisher or you want to self-publish. I work mainly with people who are self-publishing nonfiction, but there is the opportunity to pitch to publishers. There's a couple of benefits and downsides to both, to getting a book deal with a publisher and self-publishing. Getting a book deal, you get the benefit of distribution and credibility of having a publishing house logo on your work. That can open doors with the publisher too, getting into writers' festivals and things like that. And the distribution, people often, the dream is to have your book in an airport bookstore. That's often sort of top of the list. And you can do that with a publishing house. You can also do it yourself, but it's just a little bit harder, I guess. So that distribution is really the key thing with a publisher. They will have their own criteria around what they need from you, what they will offer you. And it really varies depending on who you are, what you have to offer, what work you've already done, what audience you have, as to, how much advance they will pay you, to how many books they want you to buy back, because there's always a buyback clause where you have to buy back a certain number of your own books. So there's a cost there. Even though they pay you in advance, you still will have a cost to buying a certain number. You may, one of the other benefits of self-publishing is that you have full creative control. So you control the timeline of when you want to publish. You control everything, basically. You, the cover, the audiobook, the your distribution. If you have quite a big audience, self-publishing is not a bad idea, because if you have reach already, then yes, publishers will actually love that. But if you've got your own reach, you end up with more money in the bank, essentially, or revenue from the books, because you get more. You're not paying royalties to the publishing house. So it really depends. That's sort of a big decision, and it really depends what your goals are. So yes, publishing house, distribution, and that credibility angle. Self-publishing, full creative control. You determine when and where and what you produce. So yeah, it's a complex sort of web, but that's sort of the basics of that, I think. It's a big decision.
And I think, just from my own experience, just self-publishing for both my books, there is a cost to doing that too. It's paying editors, paying people to lay out, typeset it, and in my case, design my cover. You're talented enough to do that for yourself. And then, I did a print run for both my books so that I would have copies to give out at events and send to people and that sort of thing too. So I think that's the other thing too. There is going to be a cost up front for the self-publishing, as well as thinking about, like you said, there's that book buyback issue with publishers. So either way, you're probably going to spend money.
Yes, you definitely will. It tends to be a bit cheaper to self-publish. So that's probably something that people may not realize, is that there is cost involved, and you will have to, like you say, hire an editor and do the design work and all of those extra things. But you get to choose who does that, and you can get good recommendations. I have a bunch of recommendations if anyone needs anything. So there's definitely cost both ways, but slightly cheaper on the self-publish, I think.
So if you had a client who said, I want to pitch this to a publisher, what advice would you give them?
I think the first thing is to make sure that you do have that idea, that core idea, and that it's a powerful, transformational core idea for the book. I think knowing your publishers as well, knowing what types of work they produce, what their distribution channels might be, what topics are hot right now. The other thing I might suggest is actually you can pitch direct to publishers. There are quite a few publishers in Australia that will take direct submissions from people. I know it's different in the US and the UK. Publishers will often take pitches more from agents. So you might be trying to pitch to an agent rather than a publisher if you live in those countries. But contacting the publisher and asking for submission format guidelines is helpful, because that will help you tighten up your the overview that you want to send to them. I think people maybe, something we've talked about, this is a Leanne Hughes thing, is the way that you do the thing is the thing. So you want to publish your book, then your presentation of your proposal needs to be looking and sounding like what your book would look and sound like, and be really clear, be really tight. These people are busy. They're looking for, like the next big idea, like a grand idea, like something that's really got punch to it. So it does come back again to that foundational work of establishing what your core idea is and who your reader is and understanding that.
That's really good advice. Thank you. Last official question of the session. What do you think? We've touched a little bit of this already, but what do you think people underestimate or don't realize about the book writing process?
I think there's a couple of things, and I have already touched, I guess, on it, but the power of your audience and your personal brand can really, if you're planning to write a book, you want to publish a book, you start building that now before you've even started the book writing process. It's a really, there's a couple of reasons why. One, if you're starting to, uplift your personal brand and uplift your content and start really connecting with people, you will get feedback from people, from your audience, that will help you with your writing process. So if you're putting content out there that may be part of what you're going to write about in your book, and then you're receiving feedback, comments, whatever, that all can inform how you end up writing about that particular topic. And it also just helps share and promote, and having an audience and having connection with people, it does really help you to promote your work. So being proactive in that space, I think people underestimate that a little bit. And and coming back to that thing of the marketing, like what's your plan post publishing? Like, if you want your book to open doors for new business, then what is your plan for doing that? If you want, I've had clients featured in Forbes, for example. If you want that, then hiring the right PR people and having a PR plan and having a marketing plan. I think, because there is so much work in getting that piece of work together in your book, that it can feel tiring and exhausting to continue on, but it is really important depending on how far you want the book to go.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think too, and this is borrowing from the PR playbook and the Change Comms playbook as well, is having an elevator pitch so that anytime somebody says, "What's your book about?" you can explain it really clearly and succinctly. And if you can't do that off the top of your head, then maybe you need to rethink, I think, maybe the focus a little bit. But getting very clear on that is so important for spruiking the book, but also just, being able to answer that question when a publisher might knock on your door. You never know. And say,
yeah, that's right. Yeah. I think there's space. The other thing I think is that people may not realize, I think we're coming into an exciting time for creative work. I think there are going to be the people who smash out their books on AI and self-publish, and, anybody can do that now. But I think what is exciting is that there's more space for creativity, there's more space for humanity, empathy, really understanding and giving your audience an experience with your storytelling, with even creative formats like corporate comics. Like, instead of, taking some serious stuff that's very serious and very knowledge focused and turning it more into something creative and storytelling. I mean, we know that helps with getting the message across, but it just also just gives you leverage if you just want to do something a bit different. And I just think there's a lot of opportunity for different formats, and I'm really excited to work with people who might be interested in that too. Like, I don't know, scrapbook style, comic style. I've been thinking about my next book and possibly even doing a very illustrated book rather than a lot of writing, doing a lot of illustrations with less writing. So, which, I mean, that appeals to people because we are short on time. A lot of people don't finish books. They sit by the bedside. So something that's more visual and succinct, I think, could be a really good way of getting some messages across. So yeah, I'm excited about the potential ideas for future authors and the way that we can produce books to stand out in the technology-driven world that we're in.
AI slop, yeah.
Yeah.
And, certainly the research I've just recently done around AI, people know when it's been written by AI. They're less likely to engage with it because of that. They certainly don't trust necessarily what they're hearing any more than what they'd hear from a human being. So this does seem to be the frontier where, people are very much like hands off. keep your hands off our books. This is
I
our
think
domain. This is the human
Yeah.
domain, and using AI to create images for your books or whatever, or to help you market it, sure, but the ideas and the stories and the voice are yours and so unique that people see right through it when it's not.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what I love drawing out of people is the unique essence of the human that I'm working with, and not turning to AI for the writing part, for sure. I really think that credibility used to sit in knowledge and how much knowledge you have. But I think now credibility is going to sit with how human you are and how you portray your humanity and the human skills and the empathy and what those elements bring. I think that's going to be much stronger, and people are going to be looking for that and enjoying it a lot more, like real human connection.
Yeah, who knew? Well, Jay, that sounds like a whole other conversation we need to have. But for the purposes of today's episode, we have 3 questions we ask every guest. Are you ready for those?
Yes.
Excellent. First question, what is an unexpected or left of field way that you've learned a valuable lesson about communication?
Yeah, so for this one, I wanted to share, there's a quote by Maya Angelou. People will forget what you said or what you did, but they remember how you made them feel. And I think that is a core, I think that's a core principle as communicators that we sometimes forget when we're trying to get a lot of information across. It can be hard to think about the emotional side of things, but emotions are not separate from work. People are a whole being with, yes, practical knowledge and skills, but also emotions. So you would know this in all your change comm stuff. That's like a really big thing, is how you're making people feel and what you want them to feel, what you want them to go away with once they've interacted with your piece of communication, whatever that might be.
I agree. Yeah, it's, focus on the feeling and the rest will kind of follow in many ways, whether it's conflict or work communication. If you want to feel like you've made a difference, that people respect you, then you got to communicate in a way that elicits that too. So next question, what is a book or a podcast you love and would recommend to our listeners?
Oh, yes. So I'm currently reading Lena Dunham's Fame Sick memoir. So Lena Dunham created the show Girls, the HBO show Girls. And it's her memoir through her rise to fame, producing and creating, writing the show, directing. She's an incredible creator, an incredible artist, and it's quite a fascinating read as to how quickly she rose to fame and all the challenges that came with that. And if you've watched Girls, then there's all the characters, like the actors are in there, and the stories are in there about how it was created. If you haven't watched Girls, then you probably need to, and then read the book.
Sounds like an excellent recommendation. Thank you. And final question, if you could wave your magic wand and change one thing about communication at work, what would it be?
So for me, I think I would love to see people drop political facades and get on the same team, come back to your core purpose and what you're there to achieve, and connect with one another in a just a bit more of a real, authentic way, and understanding each other better. So, in workplaces, we all have masks and facades and personas that we want, we want people to see us a certain way. We want to show that we are knowledgeable or, whatever it is. But I think coming back to that humanity aspect, dropping some of that stuff and just being real. And, sometimes you don't know the answers and being okay with not knowing the answers. Sometimes there's someone in the room who might be younger or in a less senior position who might actually have the solution. So being open to, understanding who that person is and connecting with them. So I think, just dropping away a bit of the maybe, corporate political kind of masking that we do in workplaces and connect on a more real level. I think, coming back to that core purpose of why you're there and who it's for, and focusing on that, not necessarily dynamics and climbing ladders and, all of that sort of stuff. That would be my magic wand way of it.
I would love that. Cast a spell, please. Well, Jade, thank you so much for being a guest on Less Chatter, More Matter. Now, if people want to connect with you about book coaching or to see any of the amazing work that you do, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, sure. So I'm happy to connect on LinkedIn. I'm under Jade Miller Consulting, jademiller.com.au. There's information on there about book coaching, and I'm happy to, receive any messages on LinkedIn. I also share stuff on Instagram, which is just slightly in the more personal space and more about my creativity and art and creative activities that I do. But I do share a bit about book coaching and stuff on there as well. So that's Lemonade with Jade on Instagram. So I would love to connect with anyone, answer any questions. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Jade, thanks so much.